A single dad offers a ride to a stranger, sobbing in the rain, only to find out she's a billionaire who disappears before he can ask her name and shows up at his doorstep the next day. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Where in the world are you watching from? The rain came down in sheets, turning the city streets into glistening rivers of reflected headlights and blurred motion. Noah Jacobs squinted through the wipers as they smeared across his windshield, barely keeping up with the downpour. The old Civic groaned at every red light, windshield fogging, heater wheezing like it was catching its breath. In the back seat, 7-year-old Maddie was curled up in her booster seat, fast asleep, her tiny hands clutched around a faded stuffed rabbit. Her soft breaths were the only thing that calmed Noah's racing mind. He was late. Again. The diner needed him by 7, and it was already 1:15. His manager had been patient more than most would, but patience didn't pay rent, and Noah couldn't afford another warning. He tapped the steering wheel anxiously, debating if he had time to take the shortcut through the back streets when he saw her. Just past the corner of Maple and 7th, standing under the broken awning of an abandoned laundromat, was a woman soaked through, arms wrapped tightly around herself. Her hair was plastered to her face, and her red coat clung to her like it was trying to disappear. One heel dangled loosely from her hand. The other foot was bare. She wasn't even trying to stay dry anymore, just standing there, crying silently as traffic passed her by. Noah's foot moved before his mind caught up. He pulled to the curb and rolled down the passenger side window. "Hey, do you need a ride?" he called, cutting through the sound of rain slapping the pavement. The woman blinked, startled. Her eyes were rimmed red, mascara smudged into shadows. She hesitated, glancing at the child seat in the back, then at him, his diner uniform, his tired eyes. Something about him must have felt safe, because she stepped forward without a word and climbed in. The door closed, shutting out the storm. Noah glanced at her, offering a small smile. "I'm headed across town, but I can take you wherever you need." She didn't answer right away, just stared at the dashboard, her voice barely above a whisper. "Anywhere but here." She sat in the passenger seat, dripping rainwater onto the cracked vinyl, her red coat darkened to a deep crimson. Noah turned the heat up, hoping it would chase away the chill in her bones, but the shivering didn't stop. Her hands were clasped tight in her lap, knuckles pale, like she was holding something in that grip that might fall apart if she let go. He glanced sideways at her while waiting at the light. Her heels designer probably sat abandoned on the floor mat, one strap torn. Her toenails were painted the color of wine, chipped at the edges. He noticed the tremble in her fingers, the glossed-over look in her eyes. A woman running, maybe. From what, he couldn't guess, but it hung around her like mist, something heavy and quiet. Still, he didn't ask. Noah had learned a long time ago that people reveal themselves when they're ready, if at all. Sometimes kindness meant not digging. "Do you have a name?" he asked gently, eyes flicking to her again. She looked over, startled out of her thoughts. There was a beat of hesitation on heartbeat, then two. Finally she nodded. "Clara," she said, barely audible. "Okay, Clara," he said, testing the name like it might crack in his mouth. "I'm Noah. That's Maddie, in the back." Clara turned, her gaze softening as she took in the little girl still fast asleep, cheeks rosy from the car's warmth, rabbit tucked against her chin. "She's beautiful," Clara murmured, voice frayed at the edges. "Yeah," Noah said with a small pride-tinged smile. "She keeps me grounded, keeps me going." Clara nodded, then turned back to the windshield, watching raindrops chase each other down the glass like they had somewhere more important to be. She seemed far away again, like she was watching the world but not really part of it. Her fingers tugged at the sleeve of her coat, nails tracing the seams like she needed something tactile to hold on to. Noah gripped the wheel a little tighter. He didn't know who she was, where she came from, or why she looked like she'd just escaped something that might still be chasing her, but she was here, now. And for tonight, that was enough. The city blurred past in streaks of amber and silver, streetlights bending across the windshield like ghosts slipping through the rain. Inside the car, The silence grew thick, comfortable, yet full of things neither of them knew how to say. The soft hum of the engine and the occasional swish of the wipers were the only sounds, save for Maddie's quiet, steady breathing from the back seat. Noah kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on the gear shift, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. But every few blocks, he risked a glance at Clara. She hadn't moved much since she got in. Her posture was rigid, like she was bracing for something: words, judgment, maybe the next blow life was planning to land. But Noah didn't ask. He just drove. There was something about her that didn't match the picture. The red coat, the elegant face, the designer shoes, those all suggested someone who belonged in a penthouse, not crying on a street corner in a storm. But then, there was the way she'd folded her hands in her lap. The way her voice had trembled when she said her name. The way she looked out the window like she didn't know if she wanted to be found or disappear completely. She was a contradiction. And somehow, Noah understood that. When he finally pulled up to the address, she quietly murmured the Halston, one of the most expensive hotels in the city. It took everything in him not to react. He parked at the curb, hazard lights blinking, and turned to her. "You sure this is it?" he asked softly. Clara nodded, her voice barely a breath. "Yeah." She reached for her purse's sleek, black leather with a gold emblem Noah didn't recognize, and pulled out a slim wallet. "Please," she said, her hand trembling as she offered him a bill. "For the ride." Noah shook his head immediately. "It's fine. But you looked like you needed someone to stop. That's all." Clara hesitated, then lowered the money, staring at him like she didn't know how to respond. Finally she whispered, "Thank you." Noah just nodded, his hand already shifting the car back into drive. As she stepped out, the valet opened the doors like she belonged there. But she turned, once just, before the lobby swallowed her whole and looked back through the rain-slicked night. And then she was gone. The next morning, the rain had lifted, leaving behind a city washed clean and quiet, like it had forgotten how to be chaotic. Noah leaned against the front counter of the diner during a rare lull, sipping burnt coffee that tasted like cardboard and watching the news flicker silently across the TV mounted in the corner. His eyes weren't really on it. His mind kept drifting to the woman in red. Clara. He hadn't expected to think about her, but something about her lingered. Maybe it was the way she'd looked at Maddie. Maybe it was the way she'd said, "Anywhere but here," like it wasn't just a line, but a last resort. Maybe it was how she'd disappeared into that high-end hotel like she didn't belong there either. The bell over the door jingled. He snapped out of it. Later that afternoon, with a little more curiosity than made sense, Noah found himself parked in front of the Halston again, engine idling. He wasn't sure what he was doing, maybe just checking that she was okay, or confirming she hadn't been some strange dream cooked up by exhaustion and stormlight. Inside, the lobby gleamed. Marble floors, 2 bright chandeliers, quiet music that felt expensive just to listen to. He walked up to the front desk, trying to ignore the way his boots squeaked on the polished tile. "Excuse me," he said to the concierge, a polished woman with a tight bun and practiced smile. "I dropped someone off here last night. Clara? About 10 p.m. I just wanted to make sure she got in all right." The woman didn't miss a beat. "I'm sorry, sir. Do you have her last name?" "I don't." A slight professional pause. "We're not showing any recent check-ins under the name Clara. Are you sure this is the correct location?" "I watched her walk through that door," Noah said, more confused than confrontational. She offered a sympathetic tilt of the head. "There's no one by that name currently staying with us." Noah stepped back, unsettled. Maybe she'd given a fake name. Maybe she never checked in. But as he walked out of the building, a strange knot twisted in his gut, something he couldn't shake, no matter how hard he tried. She hadn't just disappeared from the hotel. She'd vanished entirely. It was a gray morning, the kind that felt like it had given up on being anything more than dull. The sky hung low, heavy with clouds, that threatened rain but couldn't be bothered to follow through. Noah had just dropped Maddie off at school, and was standing in the narrow kitchen of their apartment, nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold 20 minutes ago. The knock came softly, not urgent, not impatient. Just there. Noah frowned. He wasn't expecting anyone. Mrs. Lang from next door usually knocked like the building was on fire, and his landlord never knocked at all. He crossed the small living room, avoiding a pile of Maddie's school books, and opened the door. There she was, Clara. She stood on his porch like a question he didn't know how to answer, coat buttoned tight. Dark hair pulled into a low bun that framed her face in soft waves. In one hand she held a white paper bag and a cardboard drink tray with 2 coffees. In the other, a small bouquet of wildflowers slightly crushed from being clutched too tightly. "Hi," she said, voice unsure. "I wasn't sure if I should come." Noah blinked. For a long second, he just stared at her, trying to piece together the gap between the luxury hotel and his aging apartment complex with its peeling paint and squeaky stairs. "Clara," he said finally. More a breath than a word. She nodded. "I owe you more than a thank you. And maybe an explanation." He looked down at the flowers, then the coffee. "You didn't have to." "I know," she cut in softly, "but I wanted to." Something in her eyes had changed. The weight was still there, but it looked different now, like she'd set part of it down, even if only temporarily. Noah stepped aside, slowly. "Come in." She exhaled like she'd been holding her breath for days, and as she stepped over the threshold into his world, her nervous smile softened into something real. And just like that, the stranger wasn't a stranger anymore. The apartment was small, lived in, and full of warmth. Clara took it in with quiet eyes, the scuffed hardwood floors, the faint scent of coffee and something sweet lingering in the air, the row of mismatched shoes by the door. It wasn't polished or expensive, but it was home. And somehow, it made her chest ache. Noah set the coffees down on the counter while she placed the wildflowers gently in an old mason jar that had once held pasta sauce. They stood in silence for a moment, not awkward, just waiting for the right words to show up. "You didn't have to come back," Noah said finally, voice low but not unkind. Clara turned to face him, leaning against the edge of the kitchen table. "I know. But I couldn't stop thinking about you." Noah raised an eyebrow, unsure how to respond. "That night," she continued, looking down at her hands, "I wasn't just stranded. I was lost. Not in the way that means you don't know the roads. More like I didn't know where I belonged anymore." Noah nodded slowly, understanding in his eyes, but no judgment. He waited. "I left a meeting that was supposed to define my future," she said, her voice almost a whisper. "Boardroom, full of people telling me what I should do, who I should be." I walked out, got in the car, and I just drove. No direction, no plan. I didn't even know where I was going until the engine gave out. "And then you were on that sidewalk," Noah said softly. "And then you stopped," Clara said, meeting his eyes. "Everyone else just passed me by. You didn't even know me, and still, you saw me." Noah shrugged slightly. "You looked like someone who needed a hand." Clara smiled faintly, and for the first time, it wasn't painted on. "You didn't ask for anything. No questions, no judgment. That meant more than I can explain." He looked at her, then not like someone who'd saved her, but like someone who understood the weight of being lost. And in the quiet that followed, something shifted. It wasn't just a second meeting, it was a second chance. The takeout boxes steamed softly on the kitchen table, their contents filling the room with the rich, comforting scent of sesame oil and soy sauce. Noah had suggested pizza, simple, familiar, but Clara had insisted on Chinese. "I haven't had cheap takeout in forever," she'd said with a wistful smile, like it was a memory she missed more than a meal. The table was small, more of a breakfast nook than a dining space, cluttered with crayon marks and a half-finished jigsaw puzzle that spanned its entire surface. Lily sat cross-legged in her chair, holding a spring roll in one hand and sizing Clara up with the quiet curiosity only children can manage. "So," Lily said between bites, "you're the lady from the rain." Clara blinked, then laughed. "I suppose I am. You looked really sad," Lily added matter-of-factly. "Lily," Noah said gently, but Clara raised a hand, smiling. "It's okay," she said. She turned to Lily. "You weren't wrong. I was. Are you still sad?" The question came without hesitation. Clara paused, chopsticks suspended mid-air. "Not as much," she said honestly. "Not right now." That seemed to satisfy Lily, who returned to her food, reaching for a fried dumpling like her job here was done. Noah watched them quietly, his chest tightening with something he couldn't quite name. Clara didn't just tolerate Lily. She spoke to her like she mattered, like her little voice carried weight. That wasn't something Noah saw often, especially from strangers. Especially not from women who wore coats that probably cost more than his monthly rent. After dinner, Clara helped clear the table, gently sliding the puzzle pieces aside without disturbing the pattern. Lily insisted on showing her the puzzle's progress. "It's a fairy castle, see?" And Clara crouched beside her, captivated like she was looking at art in a gallery. "You're good at this," Clara said, pointing to a section of the sky Lily had been working on. Lily beamed. "Daddy helps me, but he always puts the trees in the wrong place." Clara glanced at Noah, a twinkle in her eye. "I'll keep that in mind." And just like that, in the glow of soft kitchen light and laughter over misfit puzzle pieces, a quiet bond began to form. Not rushed. Not forced. Just real. The next morning, Clara was still there sitting, cross-legged on the couch, in one of Noah's old sweatshirts, sipping coffee like it was the most natural thing in the world. The scent of it filled the apartment, warm and grounding. Sunlight spilled through the blinds in slats across her face, catching on her lashes and the loose strands of her hair. She looked different in the daylight. Softer, maybe. But still composed in a way Noah couldn't quite put his finger on. She'd offered to stay the night on the couch after dinner, insisting it would be better than heading back out into the dark with no plan. Noah had hesitated, but Maddie had pulled her in by the hand and said, "You can help us finish the castle tomorrow," like that settled it. Now, watching Clara, as she flipped through the local paper with an absent-minded air, Noah noticed something he hadn't the night before. The way she held herself. The precision of her posture. The calm focus in her movements. It wasn't just grace, it was control. Practiced. Intentional. She didn't seem like someone used to drifting. She seemed like someone used to leading. Clara's clothes were plain, her bag well worn, and she had slipped so seamlessly into their modest little world that it almost made sense. Almost. But now that the storm had cleared, so had Noah's instinct. Something didn't line up. "You always carry yourself like that?" he asked, nodding toward her casually from across the counter. Clara looked up. "Like what?" "Like you're used to boardrooms, not take-out cartons." She smiled, slow and a little wary. "I guess old habits die hard. So what is it? Law? Politics? Military?" She laughed softly. "None of those." "But something," he pressed gently. "You don't have to tell me. I'm just curious." Clara looked at him, really looked, like she was weighing something in her chest. "I've been a lot of things," she said finally. "But lately, I've been trying not to be any of them." Noah nodded, filing the moment away. He didn't know what kind of life Clara Hartwell had left behind, but he was starting to suspect it wasn't small. The day had started simple, the way good days often do, blue skies, the first hint of spring in the air, and Lily's bright, persistent pleading for just 1 hour at the park before her afternoon art class. Clara had smiled and offered to come along, and Noah, still getting used to her unexpected presence in their lives, agreed. It felt innocent, ordinary. They walked the 2 blocks together, Lily skipping ahead in her sparkly sneakers while Clara and Noah trailed behind, coffee cups in hand, talking softly. Clara seemed more at ease than he'd ever seen her laugh unguarded, her shoulders unburdened. Noah didn't say it out loud, but he liked seeing her this way, human, happy. At the park, Clara and Lily gravitated toward the swings, where Clara ended up pushing Lily higher and higher until she squealed with delight. Noah sat back on a bench, letting the sound of Lily's giggles fill his chest with warmth. He watched Clara out there, crouched in the mulch, pretending to search for fairy treasure, her coat forgotten on the bench beside her. She didn't carry herself like someone hiding anymore. He didn't notice the man with the camera until it was too late. A sharp, mechanical click behind him. Noah turned, catching a quick silhouette ducking behind a tree, a long lens disappearing into a black bag. His gut clenched. By the time he stood and looked again, the photographer was gone. Just a flash of a blue hoodie slipping into the crowd, gone like smoke. Noah tried to brush it off. Maybe he was imagining things. Maybe it was nothing. But the next morning, as he flipped through the news feed on his phone while sipping his coffee, his stomach dropped. Tech heiress Clara Hartwell, spotted in suburbs with mystery child and unknown man. Below the headline was a photo: Clara crouched by the swing set, Lily mid-laugh, and Noah in the background looking straight at the camera. The article was short, speculative, but the image was enough. He looked up from the phone. Clara was at the sink, humming softly, completely unaware, and suddenly, Noah knew the truth. She wasn't just someone trying to disappear, she was someone the world was looking for. The article sat open on Noah's phone, glowing like a warning light he couldn't ignore. He'd reread the headline 3 times, hoping it might change, hoping it wasn't her, wasn't them captured in such startling clarity. But there was no denying it. Clara's smile, Lily's laughter, his own bewildered face, all frozen in time, all exposed. He set the phone down on the counter, heart pounding harder than it should have. Clara was in the living room, folding one of Lily's drawings with careful hands, her expression calm, content, like she was still wrapped in the warmth of yesterday. Noah hated what he had to do, but he couldn't hold it in anymore. Clara. She looked up at the sound of her name. Really looked. He never used it like that. Not flat, not questioning. She straightened slowly. What is it? He held up the phone without a word. She took one step forward, then froze when she saw the screen. Her face didn't crumple, it didn't break, it just shifted. Like a wall being quietly pulled back up. I was going to tell you, she said softly. Noah leaned on the edge of the counter, arms crossed, trying to steady himself. When? Clara exhaled. Soon. I didn't want it to matter. Not yet. He waited. She stepped closer, folding her arms tightly across her chest like she was bracing for impact. I'm Clara Hartwell. My family owns Hartwell Technologies data systems, infrastructure, smart tech. I grew up in a world of contracts and press releases and rooms full of people pretending to care. Every minute of my life has been scheduled, sold, or analyzed, until I walked away. Noah said nothing. Clara's voice cracked just slightly. That night, I wasn't just upset. I was done, with all of it. I walked out of a boardroom, threw my phone in a storm drain, and drove until the car broke down. That's when you found me. He stared at her, trying to reconcile the woman in his kitchen with the woman on that screen. Why here? He asked. She met his gaze. Because when you looked at me, you didn't see headlines or money. You just saw someone who needed help. Her voice was quiet now, nearly a whisper. I didn't come here to lie, Noah. I came here to remember who I was before the world told me who I had to be. It started with a knock on the door. Noah opened it, expecting Mrs. Lang with another complaint about the recycling bin, but instead found a man in sunglasses and a windbreaker, holding a camera just low enough to seem polite. Behind him, another man hovered near the curb with a telephoto lens pointed right at the apartment. Mr. Jacobs, any comment on your relationship with Clara Hartwell? The first one asked, voice too smooth, too rehearsed. Noah shut the door without a word, but it was already too late. By noon, 3 more reporters had circled the building. By evening, a van from a local news station was parked across the street like a predator waiting for the right moment to pounce. And Noah's phone, usually reserved for work calls, and PTA messages buzzed endlessly with unknown numbers and blocked callers. He turned it off. Lily noticed first. Daddy, why are people outside taking pictures? Noah forced a smile. Just some people being nosy, kiddo. Nothing to worry about. But she saw the tension in his jaw, the way he double-locked the door before bedtime. The next morning, everything unraveled. Noah walked into work at the diner, only to be met with the tight-lipped frown of his manager, Gus. The old man looked like he hadn't slept. "You didn't tell me you were involved with a billionaire?" Gus said, voice low but sharp. "I'm not involved with anyone," Noah replied. "And it's none of their business." Gus sighed, scrubbing a hand over his face. "You've been good to us, Noah, but we got press sniffing around the parking lot. People asking if you're trying to sell your story. This place can't survive a scandal, even a fake one." Noah didn't argue. He just took off his apron and walked out. That afternoon, Lily came home with a note from the school. "Due to recent events surrounding media exposure, we will be re-evaluating Lily Jacobs' enrollment to ensure a safe and distraction-free environment for all students." Noah sat down hard on the couch, note trembling in his hand. The cameras hadn't just followed Clara into his life, they were trying to take it apart, piece by piece. Clara found him on the balcony, sitting in a folding chair with a chipped mug of coffee gone cold in his hands. The city stretched beyond the railings, bathed in the muted gold of sunset, but Noah wasn't looking at it. His gaze was somewhere far off past the streets, past the rooftops, past anything she could reach. She stepped out quietly, barefoot, holding a blanket over one arm like it might shield her from what she was about to say. "I saw the school note," she said gently. Noah didn't look up. "They're just covering their bases. They're panicking," Clara replied, "like everyone else." He didn't argue. Just took a sip of cold coffee like he didn't notice. Clara stood beside him for a moment, unsure, then knelt so they were eye level. "You don't deserve this. Neither does Lily." He finally looked at her then, and the weight in his eyes startled her more than any headline ever could. "I know," he said. "But it's happening anyway." There was a pause, thick and heavy. "I can fix this," Clara said, her voice careful. "I have a property outside the city. It's quiet, gated, nobody knows it's mine. You and Lily can stay there for a while. Until it calms down." Noah's brow furrowed. "Clara, no press, no reporters, just space, safety." He sat back, jaw tight. "You mean a hideout?" "I mean a safe place for your daughter," she said softly. He ran a hand through his hair, standing now, pacing the narrow space between chair and railing. "This is exactly what I didn't want. To be some problem you solve with money. Some side project." Clara flinched, but she didn't look away. "This isn't charity, Noah. It's gratitude. It's care." He looked at her then, really looked, and for a second she thought he might say yes, but he shook his head. "I appreciate the offer, I do, but we've made it this far on our own." Clara swallowed the lump in her throat. "You shouldn't have to keep doing everything alone." "I know," he said quietly, "but that's how I keep things simple." And with that, he stepped back inside, leaving Clara standing there, blanket still clutched in her arms, heart heavier than it had been in days. The letter came in a pale blue envelope, innocent, almost cheerful, like it might contain a birthday card or a thank you note. But the moment Noah saw the return address scrawled in familiar script, his stomach dropped. He tore it open with shaking hands, the paper thin and too formal. It wasn't from Diane, not exactly. It was from her lawyer. Noah read the first paragraph twice, then a third time, each word landing like a blow. "Given the recent media attention, safety concerns, and questions of stability, my client, Diane Whitmore, is requesting a formal review of custody arrangements for her granddaughter, Lily Jacobs." He stopped reading after that. The rest blurred. Clara found him hunched at the kitchen table, fists clenched around the letter, jaw locked tight. The usual calm in his eyes was gone, replaced by something raw and cracking at the edges. "What is it?" she asked, stepping forward, already fearing the answer. He didn't speak at first. Just handed her the paper. As Clara read, the blood drained from her face. "She's using this," Noah said, voice low and tight. "The cameras, The attention. All of it. Diane's always believed I was barely holding it together. Now she has proof. Clara folded the letter carefully and placed it on the table like it might explode. She can't do this. You're Lily's father. You've raised her, protected her. She's got money, he cut in. Connections. And a clean house in the suburbs with a backyard and a dog. Judges eat that up. Clara stepped closer. Then let me help. No, Noah said instantly, too sharp. He saw the flicker of pain cross her face and softened just a bit. This isn't your mess, Clara. I won't let your world swallow mine. But it already has, she said quietly. And I didn't mean for it to. But I'm here now. Let me stand beside you. He looked away, his chest rising and falling with the weight of it all. Lily, the press, the past. The threat of losing the only person who made every hard day worth it. I can't lose her, he whispered. Clara touched his hand. Then we'll fight. And, for the first time since the headlines hit, Noah let someone share the weight. Even if just for a moment. The air inside the apartment had turned heavy, thick with the unspoken tension that had been building for days. Every surface felt too quiet. Every breath felt like it had to be measured. Noah stood at the sink, staring out the small kitchen window, hands buried in soapy water. He wasn't really washing the dishes, she was just moving them around, trying to stop his mind from unraveling. Behind him, Clara sat at the kitchen table, her phone off, her posture still, watching him. Waiting. It had been 2 days since the letter arrived. 2 days of Noah barely sleeping, barely eating, spending every spare second scouring custody laws and trying to convince himself that everything was fine. That Lily wouldn't be taken from him. That her late mother's mother couldn't just sweep in and undo everything he'd built. But the truth was, he didn't know what would happen. And that terrified him. She has lawyers, Noah said finally, breaking the silence. Real ones, with polished shoes and time to burn. I have better ones, Clara replied calmly. And they don't care about shoes. He turned, frustration flashing in his eyes. And what happens if they find out you're involved? That my daughter's living in the middle of a billionaire media circus? That I've got a woman like you paying legal bills I can't afford to breathe near? She's not living in a media circus, Clara said, voice gentle but firm. She's living in your apartment, with you, with love, with stability. That's what matters. You don't get it, Noah said, running a hand through his hair. Diane doesn't want what's best for Lily, she wants control. And if I give her even the smallest opening, she'll take it. Clara rose, walking over to him. Then don't give her one. Let me help you shut every door she tries to walk through. He looked at her, jaw tight. And when this is over, when the smoke clears, and you go back to whatever world you belong in? Clara didn't blink. Then I'll stay, if you'll let me. Noah's heart stuttered, his defenses folding in on themselves. He'd fought his battles alone for so long. But this time, for Lily, for himself, maybe he didn't have to. The decision didn't come all at once. It arrived in quiet pieces folded between late-night silences, the soft creak of floorboards under pacing feet, and the way Lily had clung to Noah's hand a little tighter that morning, asking, "You'll always pick me up, right?" Noah sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at a legal pad full of scrawled notes and crossed-out numbers. Nothing added up. Not the costs. Not the risk. Not the future he was trying to protect with hands already full of cracks. Clara was across the room, arms wrapped around a mug of untouched tea, waiting. Not pushing, not pleading. Just present. Finally, Noah broke the silence. "Okay." Clara looked up. "I'll take your help," he said quietly. "On one condition." She set the mug down. "Name it. No headlines, no press, no connections to you. This can't be some billionaire rescue story. If Diane's lawyers catch wind of it, they'll spin it faster than I can stop them." Clara nodded slowly. "Anonymous, discreet, private. And the apartment." He hesitated, then exhaled, the words tasting like pride swallowed whole. "We're barely holding it together here. If they walk in and see the peeling paint and rusted plumbing, they'll twist it into unfit living conditions." I have a place. Not flashy, not in my name, it's quiet, safe. We could be out of here by the weekend. Noah flinched at the word we, but didn't correct her. And the lawyers? He asked. They'll operate under a different firm. Nothing that can trace back to me. You'll be the client. Full control. He nodded slowly. And no one knows you're bankrolling this? Just me, Clara said. And now you. Noah leaned back, letting the words settle, letting the fear take a step back, so something else, something steadier, could move in. This isn't how I pictured needing someone, he murmured. Clara moved to sit beside him, their shoulders brushing. It's not about needing, she said softly. It's about choosing, and I'm choosing to stand with you. He didn't answer right away, but this time he didn't pull away. The estate sat at the edge of a wooded ridge, far from the buzz of cameras and city lights, where the world seemed to exhale and fall silent. The driveway curved like a ribbon through old pines, leading to a low, modern house built of stone and glass, elegant, but not ostentatious. It was the kind of place Noah had only ever seen in magazines. The kind of place that felt like it belonged to someone else's story. And yet, Clara opened the front door like it was nothing more than a cabin in the woods. "Welcome to my hideout," she said with a small, self-aware smile, her voice lighter than it had been in days. Lily ran ahead before either of them could stop her, barefoot on the smooth hardwood, already disappearing down the hallway. "This place is huge." Noah stepped in slowly, taking it all in the open layout, the panoramic windows, the soft scent of cedar and clean linen. It was quiet. Not cold, not empty. Just still. "You live here?" he asked, more awed than he meant to sound. "I don't live anywhere, really," Clara replied, setting down her bag. "But this is mine. It's where I go when I need to remember who I am." Noah looked around. Everything was curated, tasteful furniture, artwork that whispered money, but it didn't feel like a life. It felt like a pause, a place built for retreat. Later that night, after Lily had discovered the hidden library and fallen asleep with a new book clutched to her chest, Clara poured 2 glasses of wine and led Noah to the back terrace. The sun was setting behind the trees, casting gold over the lake below. "I used to come here after board meetings," she said, settling into one of the lounge chairs. "After press conferences. Whenever I had to smile too long or lie too well." Noah studied her profile, the sadness tucked into her features like it had always been there. "Looks peaceful," he said. "It is." But for a long time, it was just expensive silence. She looked at him then, eyes raw in the fading light. "You and Lily. You brought the noise I didn't realize I missed." Noah didn't speak. He just sat beside her and let the quiet between them feel full instead of empty. The fireplace crackled softly in the living room, casting long shadows on the walls as the night deepened. Outside, the lake shimmered under the moonlight, still and silver. Lily was fast asleep upstairs, the hush of her breathing echoing faintly through the baby monitor Clara had dug out of a closet, dusty but still working. Noah sat on the rug, back against the couch, cradling a cup of tea Clara had insisted on making. Across from him, she curled up in the oversized armchair, her knees drawn close to her chest, the sleeves of her sweater pushed up just enough to reveal a thin scar on her wrist. He didn't ask. Not yet. The quiet stretched between them, not uncomfortable, but heavy with things unsaid. "She would have liked you," Noah said suddenly, his voice low, distant. "My wife, June." Clara blinked, caught off guard. "Yeah?" He nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the fire. "She was softer than me, warmer. She could walk into a room and make it feel like home in 5 minutes. I used to joke that I was the roof and she was the light." "What happened?" Clara asked gently. "Car accident," he said, the words tight in his throat. "A drunk driver. Lily was 4. I was supposed to pick her up that day, but I stayed late at the shop. June offered to go instead." He paused, jaw clenched. "Sometimes I still wonder if she'd be alive if I'd left 10 minutes earlier. Clara's heart broke quietly, without a sound. You can't think like that. I know, doesn't stop me. She stood and crossed the room, sitting beside him on the rug. They didn't touch, but their shoulders almost met. You said once that people tried to tell you who to be? Noah said. What did they tell you? Clara looked down, tracing the rim of her mug. That love was a weakness. That image was everything. That emotions made you disposable. My father didn't raise a daughter, he built a product. One he could parade to investors and boardrooms. She laughed bitterly. I learned to smile while I was drowning. It's why I stopped smiling. Noah finally turned to her, eyes full of quiet understanding. And in that moment, they weren't a mechanic and a billionaire. They were two broken people learning how to be whole again. The night had settled into that rare kind of stillness where even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The lake shimmered under the stars, a sheet of glass reflecting constellations that felt almost close enough to touch. Noah and Clara walked slowly along the narrow path that circled the water, the only sounds their footsteps on soft earth and the quiet hum of crickets in the trees. Neither of them had said much since leaving the house. Words felt too big, too heavy and, somehow, not enough. Clara's sweater hung loosely off one shoulder, her hair pulled into a low knot that had begun to fall apart, strands dancing in the breeze. Noah's hands were in his pockets, but his every step seemed drawn toward her. Like even silence couldn't keep the space between them wide for long. They stopped at the edge of the dock. Lily's going to want to come back here, Noah said, his voice low, almost reverent. She's already claimed the library and named 3 ducks. Clara smiled. She can have it, all of it. He turned to her. You keep saying things like that, Clara, like you're offering me something I don't know how to take. She met his gaze, her expression soft but steady. Maybe I'm not offering. Maybe I'm just hoping you'll choose to stay. The words landed like a stone tossed into still water, small but impossible to ignore. Noah stepped closer, the night folding around them. You scare me, he said quietly. Clara's brows furrowed. Why? Because this feels like something I could fall into, and I've already fallen before. Hard. Clara took a slow breath. Then let's fall together. It wasn't sudden, it wasn't rushed. It was slow, cautious, and full of meaning. Noah leaned in first, close enough to feel the warmth of her breath, to see the flicker of fear and hope dancing in her eyes. Clara met him halfway, her lips brushing his like a question and a promise all at once. The kiss was soft, unhurried. But when it ended, the world felt different, shifted, changed. They didn't say anything after. They just stood there under the stars, side by side, quietly daring to believe in something new. The morning came in, soft, golden streaks through the gauzy bedroom curtains. The lake outside glistened in the sunlight, undisturbed and perfect, as if the night before had pressed pause on the world and it had woken slower because of it. Noah sat at the edge of the guest bed, shirtless, hair tousled, his elbows resting on his knees. He was fully awake, but he hadn't moved for a long time. His eyes were distant, locked on the hardwood floor, like it might have answers he didn't. In the next room, he could hear Lily's voice floating through the hallway, giggling over something with Clara smething about pancakes and syrup and ducks at the window. It was the kind of sound that should have made him smile. But instead, it made his chest tighten. Last night had felt right, too right. The kiss, the way her hand had slipped into his as they'd walked back to the house, the warmth of her head resting on his shoulder while they sat in silence. It hadn't been impulsive or reckless. It had been honest, real. So why did it terrify him? He dressed slowly, tugging his hoodie over his head, and stepped into the kitchen just as Clara was pouring orange juice into 2 glasses. She looked radiant in the morning light, barefoot, hair loose, one of his flannel shirts hanging comfortably on her frame. It should have looked borrowed. It looked like it belonged. "Hey," she said softly when she saw him. "You okay?" "Yeah," he said, voice rough. Then, after a beat, "I think." Clara didn't push. She just handed him a cup and leaned against the counter beside him. "You're overthinking it. I'm a single dad, Noah said. I can't afford not to. You're also human, she replied, turning to face him. You're allowed to be scared, but I'm not here for a whirlwind, Noah. I'm here because I want to build something slower, truer. He looked at her, heart pounding, walls creaking under the pressure of hope. You're sure? He asked. Clara nodded. I've never been more sure of anything. And just like that, the morning wasn't filled with doubt, it was filled with possibility. The town hadn't changed in the few days they'd been gone, but everything else had, as Noah pulled the Civic into their usual parking spot in front of the rooting apartment. The familiar creak of the brakes and rattle of the engine reminded him they were back in reality. Back to cracked sidewalks, nosy neighbors, and the unmistakable weight of eyes that lingered just a little too long. Clara sat in the passenger seat, sunglasses on, her posture calm, but he could see the way her fingers tapped nervously against her thigh. Lily was asleep in the back, her head lolled to one side, seatbelt hugging her close. Noah turned off the engine, the sudden quiet somehow louder than the hum of the car. You ready? He asked. Clara gave a half smile. Not even a little. They stepped out together, moving quickly and quietly, but the click of a camera shutter shattered the illusion of privacy. Across the street, a man with a press badge stepped back behind his car, pretending to scroll through his phone like he hadn't just snapped a shot of the three of them. Noah exhaled hard through his nose. They're getting bolder. Clara didn't flinch. They smell a story, that's what they do. Inside the apartment, everything felt too small. Clara stood in the kitchen, looking out the narrow window, her sunglasses still on. Noah watched her for a moment before speaking. We can't hide it forever, he said, dropping his keys in the bowl by the door. I'm not trying to, Clara replied. I just want to keep it ours, at least for a little while. Noah nodded, understanding more than he wanted to admit. The weekend at the estate had felt like a bubble. Out here, things had edges. People, questions, rumors. He'd already noticed the stares at the diner, the cautious way the other parents at school avoided eye contact. I'll talk to Gus, Noah said. Tell him it's not what they think. Clara turned to him. And what is it? He hesitated. Then, something worth protecting. For now, they kept their distance in public. No hand-holding. No long glances. But behind closed doors, their connection was steady. Quiet, real, and worth every whisper outside. The email came in just after midnight, blinking onto Clara's tablet as she sat alone in the living room, wrapped in a throw blanket and silence. The subject line was short. You need to see this. Her stomach turned before she even tapped it open. Inside was a link to a gossip blogon of the more vicious ones, known for its ruthless tone and shameless speculation. But this time, it wasn't speculating. It was exact. Clara Hartwell's secret life, private estate, single dad, custody crisis. There were photos, not just grainy paparazzi shots, but real, intimate ones. Clara walking beside Noah in the woods. Lily curled up with a book in the estate's library. Clara and Noah sitting on the dock, feet in the water, smiling like the world had finally gone quiet. The caption was worse. Sources confirm Hartwell has been hiding out with a former mechanic and his daughter, offering housing and legal help during an ongoing custody dispute. Is love on the linear just strategy? Clara's hand trembled as she set the tablet down. Her first thought wasn't about her name or the public backlash. It was about Noah, about Lily, about how this your world kept infecting theirs no matter how hard she tried to keep it out. The next morning, Noah found her at the table, eyes shadowed, phone face down beside a cold cup of coffee. It's out, she said softly, sliding the tablet toward him. He read it in silence, jaw tightening with every word. How did they get these? He asked, voice low and sharp. Clara didn't look up. Someone I trusted. Someone with access to the estate. My staff, maybe. A former assistant. I kept it quiet, but I didn't erase it. Noah pushed a hand through his hair, standing. This is bad, Clara. Diane's lawyers are going to twist this into some manipulative scheme. A billionaire meddling in my custody case? They'll make it sound like I'm being bought. You're not, she said, eyes fierce. Everything we've done, everything I've offered, I know, he cut in. But they don't care what's true. Clara stood slowly, voice steady. Then we show them. We fight back. We don't let them rewrite this. But even as she said it, Noah could feel the walls closing in, and somewhere in the shadows, someone who once stood beside Clara was now tearing everything down. The days that followed felt quieter, but not in the comforting way. Noah kept moving, working double shifts, making lunches, helping Lily with her math homework. But something inside him had locked up. The warmth that once lingered in his voice when Clara entered the room now felt dimmed. He wasn't cold, not exactly, just careful, controlled, like a man trying to rebuild the walls she'd gently pulled down. Clara noticed the shift almost immediately. He didn't sit beside her during dinner anymore. Didn't reach for her hand when they passed each other in the hallway. He still looked at Herbert with a kind of distance, like he was measuring how much longer they had left instead of how far they could go. One evening, she cornered him on the fire escape just after sunset. The city below flickered to life, and the faint hum of traffic filled the space between them. "You're pulling away," she said, not accusing, just naming it. Noah exhaled, slow and heavy, like he'd been holding his breath since the headline dropped. "I'm trying to do the right thing." "For who?" she asked. "For Lily, for you." Clara stepped closer, her arms folded tightly across her chest. "You think leaving me out of your life now is going to protect us from what's already out there?" He met her eyes then, and the pain in them nearly undid her. "It's not about what's out there, it's about what's coming. Diane's lawyers have already filed a motion to reevaluate. My name's being dragged into tabloids. I've got parents at Lily's school whispering when I walk past. This isn't noise anymore, it's ammunition." "I can help," she said, desperate now. "We are helping, together." But Noah just shook his head gently. "You're everything I never thought I'd find again," he said. "And that makes this harder, because if I lose Lily because of how close I let you get—" He paused, voice cracking. "I couldn't survive that." Clara blinked, swallowing the lump rising in her throat. "So, what are you saying?" "I think we need space," he said, the words dragging from his chest like anchors. "Until it's safe again." And with that, he stepped back inside, closing the window behind him. Leaving Clara in the twilight, surrounded by a city she no longer wanted without the only person who made it feel like home. The headlines moved on, as they always did. One week, it was Clara Hartwell's secret life with a single dad. And the next, it was a celebrity divorce or a political scandal. The cameras faded. The reporters stopped circling Noah's apartment. The noise slowly dulled, but Clara disappeared with it. Not just from the tabloids, but from everything. She cut her ties to the press, disabled her social media, canceled meetings, pulled out of her family's foundation gala, without explanation. One by one, the doors she had reopened to the world were quietly closed again. Her estate staff was told to take extended leave. Security remained, but the halls fell silent. The house that once carried Lily's laughter and Noah's footfalls felt colder than ever, like a stage after the final scene. Curtains drawn, applause long faded. In the privacy of her bedroom, Clara sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by unopened letters and legal documents she couldn't bring herself to read. Her hair was unbrushed, her phone face down and lifeless. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. Time had become abstract, measured only by the angle of sunlight on the floor and the brief flickers of memory that crashed through her like waves. The fire escape. His voice. "If I lose Lily because of how close I let you get." It had been days, but the words still echoed like they'd been carved into her chest. Clara didn't blame him. That was the worst part. She understood. He was protecting the one thing he loved most. And somehow, she had become the threat. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about the feel of his hand in hers, the sleepy smile Lily gave her over pancakes, the quiet weight of peace she'd felt when they were all under the same roof. She had thought she was building something real. Instead, she'd watched it crumble under the weight of her name. When her assistant called to check in, Clara didn't answer. When the board requested a video conference, she declined. She didn't want to be Clara Hartwell anymore. She just wanted to be the woman who'd once kissed a man by the lake and felt, for one fleeting moment, like she belonged. And now she wasn't even sure who that woman was. The courtroom was too bright. Fluorescent lights buzzed above as Noah sat stiffly at the table, his fingers clenched around the edge like it was the only thing holding him upright. He wore his best shirt pressed the night before, until the collar sat just right, and a pair of shoes he hadn't worn since June's funeral. They pinched with every step. Across the aisle, Diane Whitmore sat tall and composed, her pearl necklace gleaming under the lights. She didn't look angry, she looked confident, certain, as if she'd already made peace with how this would end. The judge shuffled papers with slow deliberation, his expression unreadable. Every minute felt like a lifetime. Noah's attorney, a quiet, focused woman named Ramirez, stood with calm authority, presenting documentation, character references, financial statements, and letters from Lily's teachers. "He is not perfect," Ramirez said clearly, "but he is consistent, he is present, and above all, he is her father. No amount of wealth or estate fences can replace that." Diane's lawyer countered with quiet, venom-citing media exposure, the so-called influence of a wealthy outside party, and instability from public scrutiny. They never said Clara's name, but they didn't have to. Noah didn't flinch, not once. He kept his head high, his answers honest. When asked if he had accepted outside assistance, he said yes. When asked if it was romantic, he paused, then said, "It was real, but it's not active. Not anymore." And when asked what mattered most to him in the world, he looked the judge dead in the eye. "My daughter, every breath I take is for her." When the verdict came, it wasn't dramatic. No pounding gavel or sharp declarations. Just a clear, calm statement. Custody remains with Mr. Jacobs. The petition for reassignment is denied. Noah exhaled, barely. Ramirez patted his shoulder. Diane stood silently, unreadable, then turned and walked away without a word. Outside the courthouse, the air was warm, the sun bright. Lily ran up to him as soon as she saw his face, launching herself into his arms. "We won?" she asked. "We did," Noah whispered, hugging her tightly. But as he looked across the crowd at the empty space where Clara should have been, the realized winning didn't feel like victory. It just felt quiet, too quiet. It was a Tuesday when it arrived. Noah had just come back from the grocery store, Lily chattering beside him about a school art project that involved glitter, glue, and what she called emergency-level amounts of purple. The air smelled like late spring-cut grass, warm pavement, hope. He was sorting through the usual stack of mail bills, coupons, a community flyer for a lost cat when he saw it. A plain envelope. No return address, just his name, handwritten. His breath caught. He knew the handwriting. He waited until Lily was inside, busy with her glitter, before sitting at the kitchen table to open it. The letter was written in black ink, her script elegant but shaky, like her hands hadn't stopped moving even when her heart had. "Noah, I didn't know how to say goodbye, so I didn't. I'm sorry for that. You deserved more than silence. I've spent the last few weeks doing something I never thought I'd have the courage to do, letting go. I resigned from the board. I stepped away from the company, from the interviews, from the photo ops and polished speeches. For the first time in my life, I walked away without being pushed. Not because I was running, but because I realized what I had been missing. You, Lily. That tiny kitchen with chipped mugs and burnt toast. The sound of crayons scratching across paper. The quiet, the realness. I'm not writing this to ask for anything. I just needed you to know I've changed the story they wrote for me. It's not glamorous, and it doesn't come with a PR team, but it's mine, and if there's ever a time when your heart has space again, when the noise fades, and the fear softens, I'll be where the quiet is. Not waiting, just hoping. Clara Noah sat still for a long time after reading it, the letter trembling slightly in his hands. He didn't know what the next step would be. But for the first time in weeks, he felt something rising in his chest that wasn't fear. It was the feeling of something coming back to life. The letter stayed on the kitchen table for 2 days. Noah read it once, then again, and again, after that, each time letting the words sink deeper into the places he hadn't let himself feel for weeks. He memorized the curves of her handwriting, the careful pauses in her sentences, the way she didn't ask for forgiveness but gave him a door anyway. And still, he hesitated. It wasn't until Lily came into the kitchen, smudged with paint from her latest masterpiece, and said, "You look sad when you think about her," that something snapped. He didn't pack a bag. He didn't check the time. He just grabbed his keys, kissed Lily's forehead, and asked Mrs. Lang to watch her until he got back. She gave him a knowing look, like she'd been waiting for this moment long before he had. Traffic blurred past in a streak of red and white. The sky above was wide and blue, the kind of sky that dared you to do something reckless. His hands were tight on the steering wheel. His heart was louder than the engine. At the airport he had no flight number, no gate. Just a name and the desperate hope that it wasn't too late. "Clara Hartwell," he said breathlessly at the information desk. "Is she flying out today?" The woman behind the counter raised an eyebrow. "Sir, we can't give out." "It's important," he said, voice cracking. "Please." Something in his eyes must have swayed her. She typed, paused, looked up. "There's a Clara Hartwell on flight 804. International Terminal, Gate 36. It boards in 20 minutes. He ran, dodging luggage carts and weaving between startled travelers. Noah sprinted through the terminal like a man chasing something he'd already lost once and swore not to lose again. Gate numbers blurred. His lungs burned. He didn't stop. And then, there she was. Clara, standing near the gate, passport in hand, hair pulled back, eyes fixed on the departures board with that same quiet sadness she'd worn the night he found her in the rain. "Clara," he called, breathless. She turned. Their eyes met. And everything, every wall, every fear, every inch of distance fell away. For a moment, neither of them moved. The terminal buzzed around them, boarding calls echoing over the speakers, suitcase wheels clicking on tile, the low murmur of strangers in motion, but it all faded into a blur the second Clara saw him. Her breath hitched. Passport trembling in her hand, she blinked like she didn't trust her own eyes. Noah stood just a few feet away, chest heaving, curls damp with sweat, a wild kind of desperation in his eyes that broke her heart in two. He stepped closer. Words caught in his throat. "I thought," she started, but her voice faltered. "I couldn't let you leave," he said quietly, voice rough with exhaustion and something deeper. "Not without knowing. You weren't the mistake. Letting you go was." Clara's eyes filled instantly. She looked down, covering her mouth with one hand, trying to breathe past the ache. "I never wanted to be the thing that made your life harder," she whispered. "I just wanted to be part of it." "You were," Noah said. "You are." He took one more step. Now, just inches apart, the space between them felt fragile, holy. "I was scared," he said. "And I pushed you away when I should have pulled you in. You gave me quiet when the world was chaos. You gave Lily something I didn't even realize she was missing. And you gave me everything I didn't know I still had room to feel." Clara looked up at him through tears, her lip trembling. "You really came here just to say that?" He gave a small, crooked smile. "No, I came here to ask if there's still time to fix it." Her fingers reached for his slowly, almost shyly, and when they touched skin on skin it was like something slid back into place. "I'm not getting on that flight," she said softly. Noah let out a breath that felt like it had been held for weeks. "Good." No kiss, no grand declarations, just fingers intertwined, and two tear-streaked faces leaning into something that wasn't perfect but was finally deeply real. "Let's go home," he said. "And this time?" She followed him without looking back. The moving truck was modest, just a small white van that could have belonged to anyone. No logos, no entourage, no cameras. Just Clara, in jeans and a hoodie, carrying her own boxes up the narrow steps of the apartment 2 floors above Noah's. She'd insisted on it. No security detail. No estate. No whispered names. Just a fresh start in a town that barely remembered headlines once they faded. The kind of place where you could be someone new without having to explain why. Her name on the lease was Clara Winna, middle name she'd always liked, paired with the simplicity of a surname that carried no weight. It felt strange at first, signing papers without her legacy attached. Strange and freeing. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, and a stove that leaned slightly to the left. But the windows let in morning light, and when she opened them, she could hear the laughter from the playground 2 blocks over. For the first time in her life, Clara didn't measure value by square footage or the thread count of the sheets. She measured it by peace, by proximity, by the fact that Lily now knocked on her door every afternoon after school, bursting in with art projects and wild stories and the easy kind of love children give when they feel safe. Clara kept juice boxes in the fridge just for her, and marshmallows for hot chocolate, and colored pencils in a mason jar by the window. Noah helped her hang picturesque simple ones. A framed photo of a lake at dusk, a sketch Lily had made of the 3 of them holding hands under a tree. A quiet life captured in brush strokes and fingerprints. They took things slow. Dinner twice a week. Sunday walks. Late-night talks through open windows from 2 floors apart. No headlines. No pressure. Just being. One evening, Noah stopped by with takeout and sat on her floor, eating lo mein straight from the carton. "You happy?" he asked. Clara looked around her tiny, perfect apartment, then at the man who'd seen her at her worst and still come running. "I think I finally am," she said. And this time, she meant it. The building was nothing special, just a dusty old brick structure on the edge of town, once an out-of-business upholstery shop with faded signage and broken windows. But to Noah, it looked like a future. He stood out front, keys in hand, staring up at the crooked "For Lease" banner being taken down by the landlord. Clara stood beside him, arms crossed, sunglasses perched on her head despite the cloudy sky. "You really think it can work?" he asked, squinting at the warped garage door. Clara smiled. "I think anything you build with your hands tends to last." He looked down at the keys, still unsure, still a little afraid. "I don't want this to be some favor. You've done enough." Clara turned to him, her voice soft but firm. "It's not a favor, Noah. It's an investment. In you. In something real. You gave me a place to feel human again. Let me give you the space to build your dream." That was how Jacob's Auto Repair was born. Not with ribbon cuttings or press releases, but with long nights and oil-stained jeans. Clara helped behind the scenes, quietly signing paperwork through a shell company, handling the permits, fronting the money with clean, careful distance. She never asked for credit. She only asked that the shop feel like his. Noah worked tirelessly. Fresh paint on the walls. A new hydraulic lift. Second-hand tools, arranged with precision and care. A battered neon sign, refurbished by a friend, that blinked to life one early morning. Jacob's Auto, honest work. No nonsense. And it was more than just a garage. It was a second chance. Customers started to trickle in: neighbors, single moms, retired vets, people who had always trusted Noah because he never upsold, never lied, never did more than was needed. Word spread. Business picked up. And every time he looked at the corner of the shop where Lily had painted a crooked little heart with Daddy's Place scrawled beside it, he felt something he hadn't in years. Pride. Real, steady, bone-deep pride. And when Clara stopped by after closing, bringing coffee and leaning in the doorway with that soft smile, Noah knew this wasn't just a shop, it was home. It happened on a Thursday. The kind of ordinary afternoon that didn't ask to be remembered but would be forever. Noah was under the hood of a rusted-out sedan, grease on his hands and music low on the radio, when he heard Lily's voice echo through the shop. "Clara, wait! Come see what I made!" He peeked out from beneath the hood just in time to see Clara duck as a paper airplane soared past her head and landed near his toolbox. Lily stood proudly beside a fold-out table in the corner, where she'd set up an impromptu office for after-school crafts. "I made a family tree," Lily announced, waving her arms dramatically. "Wanna see?" Clara crossed the shop floor, wiping her hands on the towel tucked into her jeans. She crouched beside Lily as the little girl pointed to each name scrawled in crayon. Mom, June, written carefully at the top. Dad, Noah, below that, and me, Lily. In the middle, circled 3 times in purple. But it was the bottom right corner that made Clara stop. There, in the same bright marker, was a name written with childlike certainty. Bonus Mom, Clara. Decorated with stars and a crooked heart. Clara blinked fast. "Bonus Mom, huh?" Lily grinned. "That's what Emma at school calls her stepmom. But I like bonus better, because you're not a replacement. You're a surprise upgrade." Clara laughed, breath catching in her throat. "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever called me." From across the shop, Noah watched wrench in hand, heart thudding hard in his chest. Later that night, after dinner and dishes, and Lily's 5th request for just one more chapter, Clara stepped onto the balcony, wrapped in a blanket, mug in hand. She found Noah waiting there, fidgeting with something in his pocket. He stood, nervous in a way she hadn't seen in a long time. No grand gesture. No rehearsed speech, just him. "I was going to wait," he said, stepping closer. "Until the right time, the perfect moment, but today felt right." He pulled out a small velvet box, opened it with trembling fingers, and looked her dead in the eye. "Clara Wynne, will you marry me?" She didn't cry. She just smiled, kissed him, and whispered, "Yes." "And somewhere inside the apartment," Lily whispered loudly to herself. Called it. Morning arrived gently in their corner of the world, with sunlight trickling through gauzy curtains and the scent of pancakes drifting down the hall. Lily was already at the table, bare feet swinging, syrup smeared across her cheek as she narrated an elaborate tale about a dragon, a frog prince, and a bonus mom who knew karate. Clara stood at the stove, flipping pancakes with a grace that had nothing to do with skill and everything to do with peace. She wore one of Noah's old t-shirts, hair in a loose braid down her back, laughter on her lips. Noah leaned against the doorway, mug in hand, taking it all in. Their life wasn't loud or extravagant. It didn't glitter with headlines or echo with the buzz of boardrooms. It was quiet, beautifully, stubbornly quiet. The kind of life built from second chances and slow mornings. From love that didn't ask to be proved every day because it was already understood. The auto shop thrived not booming, not flashy, just steady. Noah fixed cars, mentored local teens, and came home by 6 most nights. Clara helped where she could, balancing invoices, updating the shop's humble website. But mostly, she built something for herself. A new identity rooted in small things. Community meetings, a part-time writing class, early walks with Lily, who insisted on stopping to pet every dog. There were no more paparazzi, no more courtrooms, just dinners around a wobbly kitchen table and laundry that never quite folded itself. On weekends, they picnicked at the lake near Clara's old estate, now empty and up for sale. Lily called it the castle we used to borrow. They laughed, played card games, collected rocks like treasure. And in the moments between, Clara would catch Noah looking at her the same way he had that night in the terminal, like she was still the answer to a question he hadn't dared ask until it was almost too late. They weren't chasing wealth anymore. They didn't need to. Because here, in the small apartment with peeling paint and too many throw pillows, They had found something more rare than gold, a life that was theirs, and it was richer than anything either of them had ever known. The rain came gently that evening, just like it had years ago, soft, steady, painting the streets in silver streaks beneath the glow of the street lamps. But this time, it wasn't a storm. It was memory, quiet and sweet, washing over them like a story being reread. Noah leaned against the doorway of the auto shop, now twice as big, with Lily's old drawing of Daddy's place framed proudly in the office. Clara stood beside him, wrapped in his hoodie, sipping tea from a chipped mug they both refused to replace. The hum of the town around them was familiar now, safe, real. Behind them, Lily, now 12 and growing faster than Noah, was ready sat at the counter, helping a customer with a clipboard in hand and confidence that mirrored both her parents. She was bright, kind, a little wild, and deeply, wonderfully loved. "Remember that night?" Clara said softly, nodding toward the street. Noah followed her gaze. It wasn't the same sidewalk, not exactly, but close enough. Close to where she had once stood, soaked and unraveling. Where he had pulled over without thinking. Where everything had started. "I almost didn't stop," he admitted, voice warm with nostalgia. "I was late. The car was nearly out of gas. Maddie was asleep in the back." Clara smiled. "But you did." He looked at her then, the same way he always had when he let his guard down completely. "Best wrong turn I ever made." She reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "I wasn't looking for anything that night. Not safety, not love, but I found both." The sound of Lily's laughter drifted out behind them, followed by the clatter of tools and the soft ding of the front bell. Noah exhaled, the kind of breath that only comes after years of holding on, holding back, and finally letting life just be. "That one ride," Clara said, eyes misting slightly, "changed everything." And it had. Not with grand gestures, not with headlines or fairy tale magic, but with one small act of kindness on a rainy night, a mechanic who stopped, and a woman who stayed. Fate didn't shout. It whispered, and they listened.